Hi, today we're going to talk about error function in Excel. Error function in Excel helps to create professional spreadsheets that doesn't display error messages. We have some of the error functions that will make use in Excel. We have the if error, the if NA, the is error, and the is NA. The if error. The if error returns an alternative value if formula results in error. We have the if NA, which specifically handles NA errors common with lookups. We have the X error, which returns true if value is any error type, false or otherwise. We have the is any, which return true if value is any error. So let's take a look on how we can use all these error functions in our Excel spreadsheet. So let's talk about the error functions that we have in Excel. So for example, we'll actually talk about error function, but we want to know how we can use some of these error functions. For example, we have if error, if any, is error, and is any. So how do we do this? So for if error, uh, you're saying when formula catches an error, then replace with something more friendly or more user friendly. But for is error, you're saying okay, if anything you see any error, return a true if the formula or actually has an error. If the formula actually has an error, return true. If the formula does not have an error, return false. Otherwise, or something. So, for example, let's do this. Let's say we have values like this. Uh, for example, let's say equals to if error, and we say if error, we say uh, let's say 0, or let's say this divided by this, comma. Then we say return error if you see it as an error. So return it as error. So that's going to be our error message. So let's so basically it's going to return error because this is an error. You cannot divide a text with a number by a number or something. So you see how this work out. If any is talking about if you are dealing with a no value not available, any is actually value not available. If you are dealing with any or maybe a value is not available, then and you have any error, if any error, so you see how that one also works about. For each error, let's do each error. So let's assume that this is an error value. So and you return. So it's going to return true. Why is it returning true? It's because it's confirming that oh, this is truly an error. So the if error and the is, no, the is and the if is different. They have two different things. When it comes to if, you're asking it to return something, or yeah, you're asking to return some if it detects an error, so you're asking it to replace it with a value. If it's for is, you're asking it to replace it with either true or false if there is an error in our formula. Okay, if our formula is right or not, or if there is an error, then replace it with either true or false. That is how if error functions work. So either it is if error, if any, is error, and is any. So they all work in the same perspective. But if any is it only talks about more of the NA value. If there is an NA, that is to say value that is not available, maybe you did a lookup function and it only returns an NA, then is going to you're going to use if any. But if it is dealing with values like you have value division error or something, you're going to use if error. So that is that about this.